Hey, good evening. I'm David Wildstein, the editor of the New Jersey Globe, and welcome to the debate this evening between the candidates for the U.S. House of Representatives in New Jersey's 11th District. Congresswoman Mikie Sherrill, the Democratic nominee, and Rosemary Becchi, the Republican nominee. This hour-long debate is sponsored by the New Jersey Globe. It's coming to you virtually with each candidate in their own location. And this is just one of the changes that each of us has to face in a year when the global pandemic has changed our lives. The format of this debate allows both candidates to interact on important issues facing New Jersey and facing the nation without placing anybody in danger. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to make an opening statement. After that, I will ask a series of questions related to national and local issues and the campaign for Congress. Respectfully, I ask both candidates to stick to their allotted time. If a candidate goes on too long, I'll simply hold my hand up. If that doesn't work, then I'll interrupt. These questions are mine. I have not shared them with anybody. The questions will alternate between the two candidates, and each candidate will have 1 minute to answer. I'll reserve the right of asking a follow-up question before moving on. Now, my job is to be the moderator. My job is to not take sides, not to give my opinion. So I'll just moderate. I'll keep this debate on track as best I can. And I will look to each of you to make sure that what your opponent says is based on fact. If a candidate is attacked during the response, her opponent will receive an additional 30 seconds. And each candidate will have a chance to ask their opponent one question. Candidates will have 30 seconds to ask that question, and their opponent will have 60 seconds to respond. And candidates will have 90 seconds for a closing statement. We conducted a coin toss, a virtual coin toss, before the start of this debate. Mrs. Becchi won the coin toss. She has opted to give the first opening statement and the first closing statement. So, Ms. Becchi, we'll ask you to start.
Well, great, David. And thank you for having me this evening. And it's a pleasure to be here with both of you this evening. As you said, my name is Rosemary Becchi. I'm a wife, a mother of 3 daughters, and I'm also a tax lawyer. I've been fighting my entire career for lower taxes and less regulation. Early in my career, I had the great pleasure of working in the United States Senate. And as tax counsel to the Senate Finance Committee, I co-authored the 529 college savings plans. It's something that I poured my heart and soul into because I knew the difference that good policy like that could make in the lives of families. And today, I'm proud to say that millions of Americans save on a tax-free basis using their 529 accounts. I want to go to Washington because I want to fight for New Jersey families. I think you deserve somebody that will put the people over the politics. And that's not what you have. My opponent promised to go to Washington and be a different kind of Democrat, but she hasn't been. She's voted with Nancy Pelosi 99% of the time. And I think you deserve better. I think you deserve somebody that's going to roll up their sleeves and get this economy going. I also think that you need somebody that's going to fight to keep our families safe and secure. You also need an advocate for the vets. And finally, we need somebody to look out for those amongst us that are most vulnerable, including the disabled and our children. When I'm in Washington, I will put the people over the politics.
Okay, thank you. And Congresswoman Sherrill, I'll ask you to make your opening statement.
Sure. Well, thank you for hosting this tonight. And thanks to Ms. Becchi for being here as well. I think our elections are a foundational part of our democracy. And so it's wonderful to get an opportunity to have this debate. You know, I've been thinking a lot about our country and service because this past summer marked the 30th anniversary of my entry into the Naval Academy. So on July 3rd, 1990, I took my first oath to the Constitution. And I still to this day remember how proud I was to be embarking on a career serving this country and protecting our values. And we're going through some tough times right now. The global pandemic, and economic recession, fighting systemic racial injustice. And yet this country has always been at its best. It's always been at its strongest when we work together with compassion and empathy. And so that's why I started the Northeast Bipartisan Regional Recovery Task Force, to bring all the members of Congress in the Northeast together to best address the problems with this pandemic. That's why I've held 22 town halls in 22 months to hear from everyone so I can better legislate for you in Washington. I've always been so incredibly proud to serve this country, first as a Navy helicopter pilot, then at the U.S. Attorney's Office, and now as your Congresswoman. And I'd be incredibly honored to continue that service. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Becchi, let me go for the first question with you. I've seen photos of you campaigning that you've posted on social media that have sent out some divergent signals. In some, you're standing several feet away from others. In some, you are not. In some photos, people are wearing masks. In others, they are not. So my question is, do you believe that social distancing is a matter of good citizenship, or do you believe that it ought to be optional?
David, I think it is absolutely important to follow the CDC regulations. And I certainly make sure that I am doing that in all instances. Look, I want to keep all of us safe and secure. And I think that's so important. But what I don't want to do is keep our families on lockdown or our economy. We've got to find ways to open back up safely and securely. And I think it's so critically important. And I call on my opponent because we shouldn't be locking down our government. And it's one of the questions I have for her. Should we be locking down this government? We should be doing more to get our economy back up and started again.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I'm so glad to hear my opponent say that, because of course my office has gotten quite a few calls about my opponent at large gatherings without a mask. We received pictures of that, and we've even had complaints of people from her campaign coming to constituents' doors without a mask on. So I'm glad going forward she's going to take these health precautions seriously.
Okay, thank you. Let me ask a follow-up, and I'll start with Ms. Becchi. Do you agree with President Trump's decision to resume campaigning 1 week after testing positive for COVID? And if I may, and I know it's a personal question, but could you tell me when the last time you took a COVID test was?
Well, thank you, David, for that question. I have not had a COVID test. And again, I would just emphasize that I do think it is very important to follow the CDC guidelines. And certainly if it required me getting tested, I would certainly do that. And I would just like to respond to my opponent. Everybody in my campaign has worked in a safe manner and exercised social distancing and done exactly what was required by the guidelines. But again, I think we need to be looking for solutions. I think we need to be looking for ways to get our economy up and running again and to move forward beyond this pandemic. It's not about keeping us on lockdown. It's about finding solutions. And whether it's finding the solutions and finding the monies to get the best testing possible, we need to be doing that. And we need to be working towards solutions, not looking for problems.
Okay, thank you. Congresswoman, let me let you respond to that also.
Well, no, certainly the president should not be going out among crowds when he's recently tested positive for coronavirus and refuses to show us that he's had a negative test. That's certainly against the CDC guidelines. He certainly hasn't, I think, shown us that he doesn't test positive and that he's not going to be transmitting it any further. In fact, most of what this president does in response to coronavirus has not only been questionable, it's been really bad for our response. So we can't get businesses open. We can't get kids back to school if we don't handle the global health crisis that we have going on right now. In fact, it's striking to know that there are more cases of coronavirus in the White House than there are in New Zealand and Taiwan and Vietnam combined. that's how poorly this president's response has been to this virus. And I was recently tested. I was just tested last time I was in Washington, which was the last week in September.
Okay, thank you. Congresswoman, the next question is for you. In 2018, you flipped a House seat that was occupied by Republicans for 34 years. And Democrats immediately began touting you as a rising star. But some Republicans take a different view. They say that you are more image than substance. And they say that you've broken your promise to be a moderate voice for the 11th District, and that on the House floor you vote with the liberal wing of your party. So my question, Congresswoman, is are you a moderate or are you a liberal?
You know, I'm very proud of my time in Congress, and I've committed to this district to work incredibly hard on bipartisan legislation and vote with this district and make sure I'm taking care of people here in New Jersey. So I have introduced 4 pieces of legislation that's been signed into law by the president as a freshman, even during these partisan times. I've introduced 75% of the legislation I've introduced has a Republican co-sponsor. 77% of my votes are bipartisan votes. So I will tell you, I don't put labels on what I do, but I can guarantee that 100% of my votes have been for the people of New Jersey.
Okay. Ms. Becchi, would you like to respond to that?
Yeah, I certainly disagree with my opponent. My opponent has voted with Nancy Pelosi 99% of the time. And on critical legislation to the people of this district, she's taken a very partisan approach. You know, let's talk about the SALT cap. You know, my opponent put forward a proposal that would actually raise taxes in order to raise the cap. And she did it in a very partisan way. So rather than reaching across the aisle or reaching across the Capitol and finding out a real solution to fixing our SALT cap, she acted in a very partisan way to hurt the people of this district.
Okay,
so I've taken over 900 votes since I've been in Congress. 78 of them have been with Nancy Pelosi. Things like the CARES Act, the 9/11 bill that would fully fund the Victims' Compensation Fund, protecting people from human rights abuses in China. I'd also say that I've worked incredibly hard on bipartisan legislation, making sure that I'm working hard for the people of this district. And I think that's been reflected in my record.
Okay. So David, let me respond to that. And let's talk about for a minute the response to the CARES Act. You know, you and the Nancy Pelosi, who you vote with 99% of the time, delayed the passage of the CARES Act by 15 days. And that's not getting the people of this district the critical help that they need. In addition, the CARES Act didn't even provide any funding in it, direct funding in it for Morris County. And that's a critical misstep. You know, you need to put the people of this district above the politics. And your voting record shows that you vote with Nancy 99% of the time on very partisan legislation and critical legislation that's needed to help the people of this district.
Okay, so my opponent supported Mitch McConnell financially, and it's her friend Mitch McConnell that's held up most of the CARES Act legislation. In fact, we voted on the HEROES Act in the House in May and still haven't gotten a vote on the Senate floor.
Okay, Mrs. Becchi, let me ask you another question. So we hear all the time about Washington lobbyists. We hear the term in ads all over the country. You literally are one, and records show that you have continued to lobby for clients of your DC firm while you're running for Congress. In January, you told the New Jersey Globe that you never lobbied on the issue of capping the state and local tax deductions. It's something known as SALT. But in an op-ed that you wrote for The Hill in 2017, you said that lawmakers should not, I want to quote you, I want to make sure I get it right. You said they should not get bogged down by a single provision. Rather, they should examine the totality of the plan. So as a candidate, you've criticized the SALT deduction. How do you explain the difference of opinions?
So David, that's a great question. Look, I am a tax lawyer and I've been fighting my entire career for lower taxes and less regulation. I've worked on important provisions like helping to make the 529 college savings plans what they are today. I not only worked on it while I was in Congress, but for many years after I left, probably 15 to 20 years after I left. I also worked on critical legislation to help retirement savings. Now, is there pieces of the 2017 tax bill that weren't helpful to the district? Yes, and I raised my voice with respect to that, and I tried to help those members that were there to fix the cap. We need to fix the cap. It is a piece of the 2017 legislation that did not help the people of this district. But there are other parts of that bill that did in fact help the people of this district. And so, as I said before, we need to fix it. And I believe that I have some good ideas about how we can fix the cap in a bipartisan, bicameral way.
Okay, Congresswoman, let you respond to that.
Sure. I mean, there's a reason that every member of the delegation in North Jersey voted against this tax bill, including the former chairman of appropriations, Rodney Frelinghuysen, who said that this bill just forced tax increases on New Jerseyans to pay for tax cuts in other states. My opponent lobbied for this tax bill, not just on behalf of retirement savings, but on behalf of corporate tax cuts for her corporate clients. In fact, she's a lobbyist. She's lobbied for Western Union to get around some anti-terrorist legislation so they could give money to human traffickers and terrorists. She's lobbied for ExxonMobil to get around many of the environmental regulations and the Toxic Substances Act. She's continued throughout her career to lobby against the regulations that keep New Jersey families safe. Well, I've quite frankly spent my entire career serving the people of this country and of New Jersey.
And Ms. Becchi, let me let you respond to what the Congresswoman said.
So as I said before, I am a tax lawyer and I fought for lower taxes and less regulation. And I have been an opponent of fighting to fix the SALT cap and have continued to fight that we continue to try to fix it. I believe that I have good ideas to go about doing that. And I fought throughout my career for legislation that will help New Jersey families.
Okay, thank you. Congresswoman, as a candidate 2 years ago, you pledged not to support Nancy Pelosi for Speaker. And in your very first vote in the U.S. House of Representatives, you voted for somebody else. But I think it's a fair question to ask, if you're reelected and if the Democratic Party maintains control of the House, will you vote for Speaker Pelosi this time?
So I worked really hard to get into Congress and thought we needed new leadership, thought we really needed the energetic ideas of new leaders. So I'm incredibly proud of my freshman class. We have a lot of innovative ideas coming out of that on the environment, gun safety legislation, helping to support better tax reform and healthcare. So it's been wonderful to work with them. It's also why I voted for Sherry Bustos, who was the type of leader that forms broad bipartisan coalitions, knows how to get things done with that. And I haven't decided who I'm going to vote for in the next election. I don't even know who's running or who will be running for Speaker. But I'm definitely going to vote for someone who helps me enact my agenda of putting New Jersey families first and getting things done, like getting rid of the state and local tax deduction cap, making sure we have good infrastructure spending on the Gateway Tunnel project, better health care, better environmental regulations, and better gun safety legislation.
Thank you. Ms. Becchi, let me let you go.
Yes. So my opponent's freshman class also includes people who have some really radical ideas like AOC and that advocate for things like Medicare for all, as well as the Green New Deal. And that's not what the people of this district want. What the people of this district want is somebody that's going to put the people before the politics and not advocate for radical ideas that will destroy their health care and destroy their jobs. They want somebody, again, who is going to put the people over the politics and not vote with Nancy Pelosi 99% of the time.
So one issue where the two of you disagree is on abortion. And Ms. Becchi, I'll ask you this question. In their endorsement of you, the Susan B. Anthony list said that you would be an advocate for the unborn children at a time when pro-life voices are greatly needed in Congress. My question of you is, if there is a move, if you're in Congress, and if there is a move to vote on legislation that would make Roe v. Wade the law of the land, would you vote yes or would you vote no?
Look, Roe v. Wade is the law of the land at the moment. And yes, I am pro-life. I have a daughter who was born without her esophagus connected to her stomach. And that happened during the eighth week when she was in my womb. And so life is everything to me. And I wouldn't change anything about her or about my life with her. And so, yes, I am pro-life.
Thank you. Congresswoman?
I think it's critically important that we fully fund Planned Parenthood. We've seen in this state, when Governor Christie defunded Planned Parenthood, how quickly rates of STDs went up, women not having access to breast exams and other maternal health care. So I think the undermining of women's health care in this country has been really unfortunate. I would say that's part of what's at stake. Roe v. Wade, when we look at the Supreme Court, certainly that's not all that's at stake when we look at a court that will roll back gun safety legislation, environmental regulations, put dark money into our election system, roll back protections for unions. All of this is on the table. And I think it's critically important that we as Americans fight hard for the things that we believe in, especially the people of New Jersey. And people here want to see good health care for women. They want to see access for women. And that's really important.
Yeah, thank you. Congresswoman, the United States is approaching 20 years with soldiers on active duty in Afghanistan. 3 days ago, President Trump promised that the U.S. troops will be home by Christmas. Do you believe this is real, or is this a pledge that's made in the heat of a campaign? And when do you think the U.S. will be ready to effectuate a full withdrawal of troops from Afghanistan?
So one of the things that has most concerned me about this administration has been an utterly chaotic foreign policy. We've distanced ourselves from our friends, from our Democratic allies. This president has gotten close to dictators. In fact, when I was in the White House Situation Room about foreign bounties or Russian bounties placed on our soldiers, I asked that the president get to the bottom of this, and if it's true, that he hold Putin accountable. He's been on the phone 6 times with Putin in that time, and he hasn't brought it up. So I think it's past time we got our troops out of Afghanistan. I think had we had better leadership, we could be out of Afghanistan. Unfortunately, this president does not conduct strategic foreign policy, and often, instead of achieving our goals or his stated goals, he creates more chaos in areas where we really need to be thoughtful about how we strategically exit.
Okay. Ms. Becchi, when do you think that the U.S. troops will be ready to leave Afghanistan?
No, I think the president is committed to removing the troops from Afghanistan, and he's indicated that he intends to do it by year end and is making substantial progress toward that. And in terms of Russia, I just wanted to say to my opponent that I do think that no one has been tougher than this administration on Russia. And then, in fact, that there is no intelligence to verify at this point that the bounty did exist. But the administration does continue to pursue it. And so, you know, I do think that they are committed to their policies and committed to being tough to those around the world that we should be concerned about.
I want to assure my opponent I've seen the intelligence, and the president certainly has not conducted himself in the manner that I would expect from a commander-in-chief who's given some of the intelligence that I've seen.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Becchi, you've said you want to see the Affordable Care Act eliminated. You've also said that you would not discriminate against people with pre-existing medical conditions. And And just a little while ago, you cited a hugely personal story of why you feel that way. So my question is this: what is your plan? How would you provide health care to, and these numbers come from the CDC, 30.1 million Americans that are uninsured?
Yeah, no, I believe very, very strongly that we need low cost and good health care for everyone. And I want to make it absolutely clear again, and it is for personal reasons, that I would never, ever vote to take away pre-existing conditions. As you can imagine, having a daughter born without her esophagus connected to her stomach, she's had a lifetime of health issues as well as education issues. And so I know how important it is to make sure those pre-existing conditions are covered. But what we need is more transparency and more competition in healthcare. What we don't need is a government-run healthcare system like my opponent and Nancy Pelosi, who she votes with 99% of the time. We don't need that kind of healthcare. That will double our taxes. It will eliminate Medicare as we know it for our seniors, and have other grave effects on our healthcare system.
Thank you. Congresswoman?
It's always awful to go through healthcare issues with family members and especially children. So I hate to hear what my opponent has been through and what her family's been through. And I hear those stories throughout my district. In fact, I remember when I was in the Navy, a friend of mine was very interested in how I was getting out and applying for law school and what I was going to do. And I said, well, have you ever thought of doing that? And he said, I can't leave the Navy because my daughter was born with severe health conditions and I can't get health care if I leave, because at that time we didn't have the Affordable Care Act. Let's make no mistake, there's only one law that covers pre-existing conditions, and getting rid of the Affordable Care Act would threaten the coverage of over 300,000 people in our district with pre-existing conditions. Getting rid of the Affordable Care Act could raise the rate of uninsured by 65%. Even the Wall Street Journal, no bastion of liberal thought, has said that getting rid of the Affordable Care Act would kick millions off of their health care. There is no plan. There's no Republican plan. There's no replacement plan. So the fact that during a global pandemic, the president's in court trying to kick millions of people off of their health care, and the fact that my opponent supports that is really breathtaking. I support the Affordable Care Act. I support the improvements that we made to the Affordable Care Act in Congress, and continuing to work hard to get coverage costs down as well as prescription drug costs.
Okay, thank you. Congresswoman, COVID has left many of your constituents without jobs. It's forced many small businesses to close, and some may never reopen. Yet President Trump and Democratic congressional leadership are blaming each other for the lack of progress for a new stimulus plan. So regardless of who's at fault, what are you going to do about what some say is a bipartisan failure to help those most in need?
I was just on a town hall this past week with people throughout the district, and I heard stories of people who had car services that were about to go under, people who didn't know how they were going to pay their mortgages, people who worked in live entertainment, and all of those venues have been shut down for a very long time now and were furloughed. So this is something that has impacted so many families across the district. And what's kept those families going in many cases has been things like the CARES Act, making sure that we had PPP loans and unemployment benefits to keep people in their homes, making sure we had direct state and local funding, which I fought so hard for. And then I fought from the state funding that they were given to get $18.6 million into Morris and Sussex County. So this has really been critical. There is no excuse. And honestly, there is no excuse that we have not in Congress passed another round of legislation. I wrote to leadership along with other members to say we shouldn't even leave Washington. We should be down there fighting for families right now. There has been bipartisan legislation put forward by the House. The Senate's continuing continue to stall it. But now the president says he wants to do it again after tanking negotiations last week. So everyone needs to get back to the table. We need to get this passed as quickly as possible because too many families in my district are hurting.
Thank you. Ms. Becchi, let me ask you the same question. If you go to Congress, what will you do to end a bipartisan failure to help people in need in your district?
So I think it's absolutely critical that both the House and Senate get back to Washington and roll up their sleeves and get to work on a bipartisan deal to help the people of this nation. I mean, in particular, my opponent should get back to Washington to help the people of this district rather than playing partisan politics. You vote with Nancy Pelosi 99% of the time, and right now she is playing partisan politics. The HEROES Act 2.0 still provides checks for illegal immigrants at $1,200 for illegal immigrants. In addition, it allows for ballot harvesting and also defunds the police by $600 million. That's not providing solutions to the people of this district. People need policies put in place that will open up our economy, that will provide businesses with the liquidity that they need to survive. Businesses are hurting right now. We need our governor to release the CARES Act. He's released less than 10% of the monies for the CARES Act. And in fact, you need to do a better job of providing money for the people of this district. When the CARES Act initially passed, there was no funding for Morris County in that bill. And that's very troubling. So again, I think you need to get back to Washington and get a deal. And again, I've done this before. You roll up your sleeves, you make phone calls, and you get people to the table and you get the work done. It's time to put away the partisan politics that have been going on. And it's been at the expense of the people of this district.
Thank you. Congresswoman, let me give you to respond.
I would just correct my opponent that the HEROES Act doesn't defund the police. In fact, there is direct state and local funding, which goes directly to our first responders. And as far as Morris and Sussex County not qualifying for the direct state and local funding in the first round of CARES Act funding, that's why I brought the governor and our state senators together, along with our county administrators, to give an accounting of all of the money that had been spent by Morris and Sussex on coronavirus. And they have been reimbursed for every penny, and at this point have received over $18 million from that CARES Act funding, I'm proud to say.
And Passaic County got $87 million. And through the initial funding, Morris County got nothing. It was only through the governor's funding.
There were other ways they got money through some of the block grant funding, et cetera. And now they've received direct funding from the state.
Okay, Mrs. Becchi, I want to ask about your campaign. You've used an image of a burning car on a campaign mailer. You say that New York City, where many 11th district residents go to work every day, has been beset by gun violence and rioting, and that chaos in New York is threatening to spread to New Jersey. And this weekend, a mailer from a super PAC that supports you, not your mailer, but a mailer from a super PAC that supports you, used the image of a burning American flag. Congresswoman Sherrill has asked that you disavow that mailing. Will you? Okay.
I apologize, David. You've frozen up for a moment, so I apologize.
So I'm asking about the mailer that went out this weekend from a super PAC, of which you have no control over, that used the image of a burning American flag. Ms. Sherrill asked that you disavow the mailing, and I'm asking if you will disavow it.
So I don't know anything about the mailer. It was not sent by my campaign. But I think what you point out is a very important issue. Look, keeping our families safe and secure is a really important issue in this campaign. And as you pointed out, there are so many people in this district that work in New York City or go to New York City for entertainment, and they can't do that right now. and making sure that we support our police and that we can, take back our communities is really important. My opponent voted for a bill that would allow a criminal to sue a police officer. That's just crazy. We can't keep our families safe if we allow that to happen. So my mailers do point out this issue because it's really important that we talk about keeping our families safe and secure. It's one of the main issues that every time I go around this district, people are talking about. People can't go to work right now. And I want to say that I am very proud that the PBA has endorsed me. And they, in fact, took the endorsement away from my opponent and gave it to me for that very reason, because she voted to eliminate qualified immunity.
Thank you. Congresswoman, let me let you respond to that.
Well, first, I really find it offensive that my opponent refuses to say that that was an inappropriate mailer and distance herself from that group. There was a picture of a burning American flag on it. And I just want to reiterate that, for somebody who's a veteran and has served this country, to have that sent against them, and then to have my opponent in our election not decry that and say that that's inappropriate is really incredibly offensive. Beyond that, I'd like to talk a little bit, because my opponent's brought it up several times, about qualified immunity and what that is. Qualified immunity is a balance that we have between the fact that we're asking police officers to do really critically important and dangerous jobs. And often in the line of duty, when they're doing those dangerous jobs, people might get hurt. But if they're working hard to protect and serve, that is not the police officer's fault. What this bill does is, after Supreme Court precedent, this bill rebalances the original intention of qualified immunity. So when you have a 14-year-old boy that county officials put in solitary confinement for over a month awaiting charges, that person, in the past year that happened, and they had no ability to hold the police accountable. When you have police officers that take a mentally disabled man and drive him across state lines and leave him on the edge of a highway where he later gets struck by a car and dies, those police officers had no accountability. Look, when you have great responsibility, life and death responsibility, as you have, say, in the military, you also have a great deal of accountability. And that's simply what this bill does.
Okay, and Congressman, I want to ask you.
Can I just comment on that?
Briefly, please. Yes.
Yes. Look, there are absolutely bad apples, right? And those bad apples need to be punished. However, to create a bill and pass a bill that would allow a criminal to sue a police officer for doing their job is not the answer. That means every time the police officer goes to act, he has to think about whether or not he's going to lose his savings, his home, for doing their job. We can't allow lawyers to be suing our police officers.
Okay, thank you. I want to ask a question that is for both of you. This campaign in the 11th district marks just the 5th time in the history of New Jersey where both major parties have nominated a woman for Congress. And in the 100 years since women have had the right to vote, 650 total congressional races in the state of New Jersey. It's just the 5th time. Over the last 232 years, the United States has never had a woman president. There have always been more men than women in the Senate, in the House, on the Supreme Court. Right now, the New Jersey Congressional delegation is 12 men, 2 women, to 86% male majority. So my question for both of you, and I'll ask Ms. Becchi to go first, is would our nation be better off if there were a majority of women in the Senate and a majority of women in the House?
Absolutely. I am a big proponent of getting more women elected. And in fact, I served as the chair of an organization called Running Start. And Running Start was all about teaching young women the skills that they need to run for political office. So I wholeheartedly support the idea of getting more women elected from both parties, because I think it's really important that we hear all perspectives. We can't just hear one side without the other. And all of us, as a mom, a lot of the things that happen in my life shape my beliefs. And again, I think it's important to hear from all sides.
Thank you. Congresswoman, are you two in agreement on this issue?
We are. This is a bipartisan moment of agreement. I'm only the 7th woman to serve in Congress from the state of New Jersey. In fact, when I went down to Washington in my first election after a good quarter, they said, "Oh, look at that, you're having a really good quarter." I said, "Yeah." They said, "Huh, who says you can't run a woman in New Jersey?" And I said, "Who said that?" Because I want to know. I've been on several Zoom meetings with our former governor, Christine Todd Whitman. And I'm sitting there, I said, "Governor, it's always so bittersweet to see you because I'm so proud that you were our first female governor. I'm not so happy that you've been our last female governor." So I think it's critically important that we raise up the voices of young women and that we have that seat at the table. I'll tell you, I'm on a chat group with other moms in Congress to talk about just how difficult it is when, my children I have 4 children, they're homeschooled, they're virtually schooling. They have been since March 12th. It's very, very difficult. If we want to have more women serve, we also have to address some of the underlying issues of what it takes to serve in Congress as a mom. And so that's what I'm proud to do. And yes, this is definitely an area where we have agreement.
At this point in the debate, it's time for each candidate to have the chance to ask one question of their opponent. Under the guidelines that your campaigns discussed with me, the incumbent will go first. You'll have 30 seconds to ask your question, and your opponent will have 1 minute to respond, and then you'll have if you wish, a 30-second rebuttal. Congresswoman Sherrill, I'll ask you to ask a question of Ms. Becchi.
Sure. So my question is just that as a mom who's seen the terrible impact that gun violence has had on our country and active shooter training has had on our children, I'd like an explanation of how it is that my opponent earned an A rating from the NRA.
Okay. Ms. Becchi?
Well, certainly I'm happy to answer that question. I absolutely support the Second Amendment. But I also recognize that we have to make sure that we keep guns out of the hands of those that are mentally ill, as well as those terrorists. But my opponent and Nancy Pelosi not only want to take your guns, they also want to defund the police. And again, we can't have that. We need to protect and support our police, as I've indicated before, and we need to be able to protect ourselves. But again, as I said before, I think it's, really important that we also make sure we keep guns out of the hands of those that are mentally ill, as well as terrorists.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I guess it looks like a little more than simply support of the Second Amendment. I have the NRA questionnaire right here. And so you earned an A from this with things like being for ghost guns and 3D printing, against magazine capacity limits, against a silencer ban, which was really harmful to our law enforcement, against taking away guns from people on the terrorist watch list. This is a really extreme view of gun legislation, and I would posit that this is completely out of line with the views and the values of the 11th District. And I'm well familiar with guns. My father is a hunter. I'm an expert qualified in the Colt 45, the 9mm Beretta, the M16. I believe in the Second Amendment. But this extreme view is dangerous. I mean, you even in this, in this NRA questionnaire, it's even against the CDC simply studying this epidemic of gun violence. It's really an extreme view of gun safety legislation.
Ms. Becchi, let me give you just a few seconds to respond to that.
Sure, I'm happy to respond. I don't think that it's an extreme view. And as I said before, I do support the Second Amendment and have been very clear upon that. And I don't think that these views that I share are extreme. And I do think that they're very much in line with the people of this district, just like the people of this district don't want to see the police defunded, like my opponent would like to do. And the people of this district don't want to eliminate qualified immunity like my opponent wants to do. We want to keep
What
our
part
guns
of my $3.5 billion of legislation I've supported and voted for funding the police shows that I in any way would ever want to defund the police? Nothing.
So in the HEROES Act 2.0, you voted to decrease the funding
state
for the
local funding,
police
which would
at
fund the police.
$600 million. And that
that's
defunds
funding
the
the police.
police. That is taking away monies for the police.
I want to move on to the next question, which is yours, Ms. Becchi, to ask Ms. Sherrill a question from you.
Sure. So my question is, you say that you support women, yet you voted for the PRO Act, which will punish moms by no longer allowing women to work as consultants or as freelancers. Many women choose to be self-employed and to work from home in order to provide them with the flexibility that they need to care for their families. If you won't stand up for moms like me who choose to be self-employed so that we can care for our families, who will you stand up for?
I am proudly and unapologetically pro-union. In fact, my grandfather, after World War II, came home and got a job on the factory floor of General Motors. It was because of that job he was able to raise his 8 kids. He was able to have a good retirement. And because of that job, after the Depression era, it lifted my family into the middle class. It was that job that directly led to my mom being able to be the first person in her family to go to college. It was that job that I traced to enabling me to now serve in the Congress of the United States of America. We have too large of a wage gap in this country. Workers have lost too many protections over time. We've lost too many manufacturing jobs in this country. It is time that we support workers, that we make sure that we are passing legislation to support workers and to support union rights. And that's where I stand. I'm happy to do it, and I'll do it again.
But you missed my question. My question was about the provision that no longer allows women to work as independent contractors. You voted for that.
There was no provision that said women can't work as independent contractors. There simply wasn't.
Change the classification of the way people are classified as workers. And it would force them to be employees, meaning that they could no longer work as independent contractors. Okay. So it would change the laws regarding that.
Thank you. Ms. Becchi, a critical local issue that always requires a watchful eye at the federal level is flooding. The district you seek to represent is at constant risk of weather events that could cause catastrophic flooding incidents. If you get to Congress, would you vote to fund a wall along the United States southern border without funding for levees and flood walls and other solutions as recommended by the Army Corps of Engineers for the Passaic River Basin?
Well, thanks, David, for that question. Look, I think it is critically important that we vote and we support things that, support and help our area with regards to flooding and other things. I would absolutely vote to support that. Look, it is important to the people of the district, and I am there to work for the people of the district. And as I've pointed out before, my opponent works for Nancy Pelosi and votes with her 99% of the time. And that's not what the people of this district need. And they don't need ideas like the radical left have with regards to the Green New Deal and ideas like that. So again, yes, I would support ideas around supporting and ensuring that the flooding protections are put in place.
Congressman, tell me about your efforts on on dealing with the Passaic River Basin and the threat of flooding in your district?
So that's a great question. I sit on the Science, Space, and Technology Committee. I'm the chairwoman of the Environment Subcommittee. We've held hearings on resilience investments. We've held hearings on lead in the drinking water. I've also convened in our district a group of mayors from some of the Passaic River Basin and the Peckman River so that we could address the flooding needs. I've had the Army Corps of Engineers here along with the DEP so we could discuss how we were going to move forward on that legislation. We finally, after years, have gotten the Peckman River Basin flood management projects put into the Army Corps' plan. We can get that funded and really move forward on this critical issue because unfortunately, this type of flooding, I'm afraid that with the storms we're seeing, may be all too much a part of our future.
Okay, thank you. Congresswoman, you're one of two members of the New Jersey delegation that served in the military. Your district is the home of the Picatinny Arsenal. It plays a vital role in the local economy. I have two questions, and it'll be for both of you, which is, what can our nation do to better serve its veterans, and what can be done to ensure that any future, in the future, efforts to close bases across the country would protect the future of Picatinny?
That's a great question and something that I've worked hard on throughout my time in Congress. I'm really proud of my work with service members and veterans. I fought hard to get on the House Armed Services Committee so I could protect Picatinny. And I was just there watching them build the munitions disassembly complex that that money was supposed to be moved to the southern border wall. But Senator Menendez, myself, Congressman Norcross fought very hard to ensure that that didn't happen. I'm proud to say we were able to save that complex. We've also fought hard for programs like IRCA and SLRC to make sure that our base is on the cutting edge of modernization. Picatinny Arsenal, how do we save it from any BRAC closures? Well, it's going to save itself, and I'll tell you why. Because it is the cutting edge research and development facility for modernization of our armed forces. And the National Defense Authorization Act, we have in the National Defense Strategy right now is to modernize our forces. And a lot of that takes place right there with the great women and men at Picatinny Arsenal. I'm so proud of the work they do. And in the last National Defense Authorization Act, we even improved that work also by getting the graduate school there accredited. So it's been wonderful. I've also sit on the For Country Caucus, a bipartisan group of veterans in the House. And we passed good legislation for Gold Star families and Blue Water Vietnam veterans. I helped start up, and I'm a vice chair of the Service Women and Women Veterans Caucus. We got 3D mammograms into TRICARE. So I've been working incredibly hard, and I'm proud of the work we're doing.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Becchi, same question about veterans and the future of Picatinny.
Yeah, no, I think it's critically important to be an advocate for our veterans. They have given their lives for us, and it is critical that we give back to them. But I will tell you, as I travel around the district, I repeatedly hear from veterans that my opponent hasn't been there for them and hasn't been met with them. You know, when they traveled to Washington, her office wouldn't meet with them, and they don't feel like they have a voice with her. And so I have promised them, and I meet with them on a regular basis, that I will be that voice and talk about the issues that matter most to them, because that's what they deserve.
Congresswoman, let me give you, since your record was discussed, let me give you a chance to respond.
Sure. Well, as you can guess, given my background, I meet with veterans all the time. So, for example, when I was with the Firemen's Union, they were passing the hat to get money for a service dog for a veteran. And that service dog was life-changing. So I worked with Rep Stivers from across the aisle, to get legislation passed to get money for PTSD service dogs. I'm going to be going down soon because we're working hard on burn pit legislation to get that passed to take care of people. I got $1 million into legislation so we could have it for the East Orange Burn Pit Center of Excellence here in North Jersey. So I've continued working very hard. My veterans case officer is a veteran. He's worked very hard to get our veterans here things like a stair lift when they couldn't do stairs anymore. One veteran, we got over $130,000 in back pay that he was owed. We've gotten people who were getting their credit dinged because of the VA. We've gotten them paid, their creditors paid off. So we've worked really hard for our veterans, and I'm going to continue to do that.
But the state VFW repeatedly tried to meet with your office and you refused. And in addition, you don't have your own, you've never introduced your own veterans bill. You've signed on to other bills, you've co-signed on to others, but the first thing you should have done when you got to Washington is to introduce a veterans bill.
And
you have yet to do
the work
that.
I've done. I've been committed to our veterans. I've met with the state VFW in my office and on Zoom since COVID. And of course, I've worked hard. One of the key pieces of legislation that the House Armed Services passes, my bill, is the National Defense Authorization Act, over $740 billion of authorizations for our military. So again, this is a critical focus of mine and always will be.
Okay, so I said I wouldn't ask a new question till not after 9:57. I have a second now, so we'll go to the last question before closing statements. Ms. Becchi, and this is for both of you, but Ms. Becchi, I'll ask you to go first. There's been a national debate going on regarding the role that science plays in public policy, and whether you're talking about COVID or global warming or issues related to clean water, it seems that there's a clear divide over those who believe in that believe that scientific fact should be used in decision making. If you're elected to Congress, how strongly will the testimony of noted scientists affect how you vote?
Well, thank you, David, for that question. Well, certainly science matters absolutely in the decision-making process. Look, part of the role of a legislator is to gather information and help make really informed decisions. So I do think that it would be a big part of that decision-making process.
Thank you. Congresswoman, I'll ask you the same question.
It would be critical to any of my decisions. I sit on science, space, and technology. I believe deeply in science and scientists.
Okay, thank you. So now comes time. This went maybe more so for me than the two of you, but this went very quickly. So with the coin toss, Ms. Becchi won the coin toss. She opted to give the first opening statement. So I'll ask Ms. Becchi to give the first closing statement.
Well, thank you, David. And again, thank you both for this evening. Look, this is a very important issues, and we face critical issues in front of us. We have got to get our economy restarted. We've also got to make sure our families stay safe and secure. And we also have to protect those that are most vulnerable, including our children and the disabled. And I think you deserve somebody there who's going to put the people over the politics and that's going to fight for you. And my opponent has voted with Nancy Pelosi 99% of the time. She promised you she was going to Washington to be a different kind of Democrat, and she hasn't been. Again, she's voted with Nancy Pelosi 99% of the time and has been nothing more than a rubber stamp for her policies.
Okay, thank you. And Congresswoman, I'll ask you to make your closing statement.
Sure. Well, thank you again. Thank you, Ms. Becchi. I think this debate has been critically important to talk about the issues that we care about in the 11th District. I think you've heard two visions presented tonight. One vision is a vision of the politics of fear and dissension, a vision that divides us and doesn't have faith in our American values, our traditional values. I believe deeply in them. I've served this country my whole life. When we come together, when we double down on those values, that's when we're at our best. That's when we can fight crises big and small. It's together. And so one vision would take away healthcare from millions of people, pander to the gun lobby instead of making sure our kids are safe. Helping corporate clients instead of New Jersey families. Another vision has a vision for our future that's going to protect all our families, protect our kids, make sure they have great jobs and we get past this economic recession and we get our kids back to school. So I've been incredibly proud to serve this country my entire life. First in the Navy, then at the U.S. Attorney's Office, now as your Congresswoman. And it would be an incredible honor to continue that service. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you both. And this brings the New Jersey Globe 11th Congressional District debate between Mikie Sherrill, the Democratic nominee, and Rosemary Becchi, the Republican, to a close. I hope that everybody will stay by for a post-debate analysis with two county chairs, Laura Ali of Morris, the Republican, and Essex County Democratic Chairman LeRoy Jones, Assemblyman Bergen, and Saily Avelenda, who is the executive director of the Democratic State Committee. I'll just say quickly, the Globe will be back next Sunday evening, October 18th, with a debate for the 21st Senate District with the Democratic candidate, Rupandi Mehta, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed for Senator Bucco that he'll join, and October
25th, David.
25th. Did I say 25th? 25th. And Congressman Josh Gottheimer and Republican Frank Pallotta will be here on October 25th. So thank you very much. You're free to stay and listen to the post-debate analysis. I would have you on mute for that, but you're free to stay. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining. Good luck, stay safe, and hope all that it continues to be well for both of you.
Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Brian, you got a suit on?
Okay, so we're live. We're just waiting for LeRoy Jones and Saily Avelenda.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
Good. Brian's got a suit on. Lady.
I always rock a suit Sunday nights. You don't? Come on.
Good job, David, with the debate. It was good.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you.
Really good. Good stuff.
I am. We're live. We're just waiting for LeRoy Jones and Saily Avelenda.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm well. How are you? So
good. Brian's got a suit on. Lady.
Speakers off because I guess we're on a little bit of a delay.
Yeah, there we go. I got it. All right. So we're live though, right?
We are. Yes.
All right. That's great.
And
great.
I think Saily is in, and I see her. How are you?
Good. How are you? Sorry, I was waiting. It was scrolling before.
Oh. Okay. Hopefully, I haven't checked. Hopefully, it got a good audience up against the Lakers game.
I know, right?
Come on, this is where we're at in New Jersey. Come on, we're always at the Globe on Sunday nights these days.
Absolutely, and Chairman Jones is on his way in.
So I was just telling Laura Ali. She asked about me wearing a suit. I sleep in a suit. I do.
Like Barney from How I Met Your Mother.
There you go.
I think we're all here. Chairman, how are you doing?
I'm doing just fine. How's everybody?
Good.
Good to be with everyone.
So this was an interesting debate. As debates go, this was, I think, very civil. I saw everybody being respectful. I saw no flies at all. So this is a different kind of debate. But
darn it, they didn't get there in time, did they? All right.
Sorry, Chairman Jones, what did you think?
Well, I would have to agree. I thought it, I thought it was very, civil, much different than, what we saw, a few weeks back, kind of resembled, a little bit of, what we saw in the vice presidential debate. It was, it was what debates should be about, an exchange of ideas, a vision, and I think we got that, and I think the moderator actually did a good job as well.
Thank you. Thanks.
Nice job.
It looks like our moderator LeRoy is going to be very partial tonight, just based on the
How can
T-shirt.
you tell?
All right, yeah, all right.
Look, I'm home. Like, we
Objective analysis.
I've been watching football all day. I'm like home. Everybody's, you and David have ties on. Saily and Laura are, dressed to the nines. And I'm looking, like I'm home, after a good football game.
You look fine, Chair. You look fine. So I'm not going to ask the question of who won the debate because that's going to end up in a 2-2 tie that I break. But I thought there were some interesting issues regarding. We have to talk about Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi came up often.
99% of the time.
99% of the time. 97, whatever it is, but
Well, it's an important issue that Rosemary had to make because Mikie Sherrill, who's a very nice woman, she's got class and decorum. I think both of them showed that tonight. But she campaigned as a moderate. She got everybody in the 11th district to believe that she was going to be a different kind of Democrat. And then she went to Washington and became one of the progressive part of the party because she voted with them. She didn't really think for herself. And I think the big difference between 2 years ago and now is that the Democratic Party has moved so far to the left that it is frightening to associate with that. She was denying with her legislation about defunding the police, but defunding the police has become the rallying cry of the Democratic Party, along with other very dangerous. It's a very dangerous direction that the Democratic Party is going in. And I think tonight was a good distinction.
That's a false premise. That is not where the Democratic Party is going. That's not a notion of the Democratic Party. That's something that messaging from President Trump has been just drilled down to create that false narrative. We are strong believers of law enforcement. We certainly do not condone the behavior of some bad apples out there, and we have bad apples in every every walk of life. So let's not paint the Democratic Party with a false brush. I think your messaging and narrative is getting a little bit tired, and it's waning on folks, and and nobody's really buying into it.
With all due respect,
to the chairman's point, I also just want to point out, like the boogeyman or the boogeywoman, however you want to call Nancy Pelosi, of the Republicans have loved to beat on her. But if 77% of Sherrill's votes are bipartisan, and she also votes with Nancy 99% of the time, then you would, stand to reason that a lot of what Nancy Pelosi does is bipartisan, because how else are you going to get it through?
Yeah,
so I think,
good point.
right, so I think like the math just doesn't work. Otherwise,
one other thing, in Mikie Sherrill, we have a voice in Congress, that is clearly a leader. She's a moderate, some progressives have, issues with that, but they understand, the value that, Mikie brings to the 11th Congressional District. I'd like to think that, Mikie has emerged as a leader and a solid voice. And I'd like to say that, perhaps Nancy Pelosi is, voted 99% of the time with Mikie Sherrill.
right.
So, David, just if I could make a point too, because Saily brought up Mikie Sherrill, she made an attempt here. So obviously Rosemary wanted to make sure everybody knew that Mikie Sherrill votes with Nancy Pelosi 99% of the time. Okay. She said it over and over again. That was a clear point she wanted to make. Mikie's only attempt to really dissuade that argument was to point to voting 77% on bipartisan votes. We all know that probably 77, 78% of all votes in any body of the legislature are boilerplate stuff that go through. They're not controversial bills. They're nothing you got to take a stance on. So really that argument doesn't change anything. It's the other 23% of the votes where you really show your true character and your true colors. And if she's voting with Nancy Pelosi 99% of her time, she's obviously aligned with her. To make any attempt to say she's not, it's really futile, in my opinion.
Here's the thing. I also think, in terms of where this district is, I remember being here in 2016 and seeing that, the Republicans had a 14,000 person registration advantage in 2016, and that has flipped. That's almost at 8,000 the last time I checked. The district is changing, the people are changing, the demographics are changing, and the politics are changing, because we had, we went from Rodney, who, I mean, I can't remember what he stood for, because he really didn't do a whole lot, stand for a whole lot at the very end, to someone like Mikie Sherrill, who really took the pulse of this district, realized what the people needed, and has been, again, if 77% of her votes are bipartisan, the extremist Nancy Pelosi boogeyman just doesn't work.
But I think a lot of this about, okay, who votes here and who votes there and what bill there, a lot of that goes over the heads of the American people. I really do believe that. And when you look even at the Congresswoman's own accomplishments, according to her, she says, I've worked on the salt tax and I've worked on the Gateway Tunnel. Both of those initiatives are exactly the same place they were 2 years ago.
Thanks to the president.
I see a congresswoman who spent the last 2 years trying to impeach the president of the United States on that bandwagon of radical Democrats that were just out to get President Trump. And unfortunately, she didn't do the job that she was elected to do by the people. And I think that's going to show up in the polls this election. I really do.
I don't think, I think what polls have you, have you looked at that you can, point to, anything that justifies what you just said?
A lot of them. There's a lot of polls and there's a lot of sentiment.
Let's talk about them. We're all here now. We're all.
How about we talk about how the two did on the debate? Let's talk about that for a second. So, David, just one thing I want to point out.
You saved it, Brian.
There were a couple times in this debate that Mikie Sherrill, in my opinion, really led us astray. I just want to give one example. We can maybe talk about it. I'll give the next example, whatever you want to do. But one of the big misleading things that happened from Mikie tonight was on qualified immunity. She tried to break all our hearts with a couple of examples. Qualified immunity is the legal doctrine that only protects government officials from lawsuits seeking monetary damages. Doesn't prevent anybody from going to jail, doesn't prevent cops from being prosecuted. All it does is prevent people from suing them for monetary damages. So Mikie made an attempt to pull at our heartstrings and say that these cops who are bad actors aren't being punished. Not true, and not what qualified immunity does at all.
And I want to ask a question about Rosemary Becchi. One of the things that I noticed in this debate is that she stayed to the right. She is protecting a conservative base. She took a strong pro-life position. Mm-hmm. She took a strong position in favor of the Second Amendment. This is a district that Donald Trump carried last time, but just marginally. And as Saily said, the registration has shifted. Is this what Rosemary Becchi needs to do in order to get that Republican base? And will that move independent voters?
Not the same Republican base. To Saily pointed that out, so accurately. The registration, has dwindled. It's not the same base that it was, 2 years ago, 4 years ago. So, so we are in a different world now. We're in a different district now. The mood and the vision and, the heart and soul of the people, speak to something totally different than what, Ms. Becchi was advocating. Her views are very conservative, much more conservative than the district is right now.
But I also want to just, without cutting off the chairman, I just want to point out that I look at the Republican Party as two different parties. There is a Trump contingent that certainly is very much to the right, but most Republicans, especially in CD11, are not Trumpers. And that is something that's a very different, it's a very fine line, because you will find that they are pro-choice. They understand that the Second Amendment, while needing, to be protected, also comes with limits. And that's not what I saw tonight from this candidate.
You're speaking about a population of voters that you don't know. Brian and I are part of the Republican Party. And yes, maybe a year or so ago, maybe people would be more pro-choice in the Republican Party. But when the Democratic Party is okay with abortions being performed up to the time of birth, that is not okay for people in the 11th district.
Here we go.
I'm actually not going to entertain that, other than to give my Republican cred Cuban Republican, grew up like, I don't need a lecture on Republicans, believe it or not. I grew up in a Republican family. So
Hey, David.
and they are not,
You're
this
not a
is not their
Republican.
Republican Party.
Hey, David.
So I just want to point out that it's not the Republican Party that it was 20 years ago, and it's not Trump's Republican Party. It just
And
isn't.
this isn't the
Not in Morris
Democratic
County.
Party. John F. Kennedy is rolling over in his grave. And I think Bill Clinton sometimes must be like, what the heck is going on? This is not the Democratic Party that there was a few years ago.
David,
you can't say that it is.
Just to get back to your original question, what's really cool, which I think is pretty awesome about what Rosemary did there, was she took actual tangible stances.
Exactly.
So
Where?
that I think is
Those
impressive.
were the only two stances
No.
I heard, because
Well,
all I
hold on,
heard was her
Saily.
talking about solutions, but no
Yeah.
plans.
Well,
I didn't hear anything else.
You know what I heard, Saily? I heard Mikie Sherrill talk about the Affordable Care Act and how she had somebody who was getting out of the Navy in 2008 or something like that. That person was getting out of the Navy and didn't want to get out because they were going to lose their health care. Well, let me tell you something. I got out of the Army in 2008. The Affordable Care Act wasn't passed till 2010. And I had a daughter who was born 3 months premature, and everything was covered. So that was a story that, again, sell us down the river. But Rosemary took tangible stances without trying to steer us away or pull at our heartstrings. And I think that part is impressive.
Because she's a woman of conviction, of incredible intellect, and she's got grit. She is who she does what she says she's going to do. What I thought was
Absolutely.
interesting
Lower
about
taxes and less regulation for corporate clients.
for the American people, which is who she fights
for the tax bill that even Rodney Frelinghuysen didn't vote
What
for.
I found it interesting.
Right, she definitely has conviction.
Moderator.
Strong moral convictions. And let me tell you something too. Did Congresswoman Sherrill say anything, disavow anything about the governor? And she had a lot to say about the way President Trump handled the coronavirus. Although he's been applauded by people like Fauci and other people, he got the ship into the New York harbor.
I don't think Dr. Fauci is ventilators anymore.
Did she speak out against Governor Murphy and his abysmal?
Is he on the ballot?
Killed all the people in the nursing homes. What
is
about
he on
that?
The ballot? Because he's not on the ballot, and it's a totally different position.
It's really a choice between how to do
a choice between the governor's not on the ballot.
I wasn't aware we were talking about Governor Murphy, but you know what? I'll go there.
And I think Governor Murphy's done a fine job.
The only reason we were able to flatten the curve is because Governor Murphy took action when the president wouldn't.
It was a day of a total shutdown. People's lives are totally destroyed, and most of the deaths
he's
happen in
saving
nursing
lives.
homes.
They're alive.
He's saving lives.
Back to the nursing homes.
They're alive.
Lives.
They're
Come on.
alive.
Wake up and smell the coffee. He's saving lives.
David, you're going to have to unmute us one at a time, I
I
think.
know. Sorry.
David, feel free to mute me. It's all good.
Unmute.
Saily, I would never. Assemblyman Bergen, let me ask you this, because you vote with Governor Murphy 85% of the time.
Clearly.
There you go.
Oh, Brian.
One of the things that I noticed in this debate compared to others is that there wasn't a lot of talk about Governor Murphy. This was more than the last two about federal issues. But I want to ask a question of the Republicans in regard to your candidate. So when Rosemary Becchi was recruited, she was asked to run in the 11th district against Mikie Sherrill. The field was cleared for her, but unlike the other districts in this state, I have not seen a lot of money coming into this campaign. This was one of the things that I didn't get to ask Ms. Becchi about, but there's no NRCC money, there's no CLF money. Mikie Sherrill has raised an extraordinary amount. Why have Republicans in a district that was held by the GOP for 34 years, why have Republicans not been able to build a war chest in this district? And I'll ask the chairwoman to go first.
Well, I think Rosemary Becchi's been doing as good of a job as anybody could do raising money. It's a tough, we just talked about the COVID shutdown. It's not an easy time for anybody to raise money. And she's on the phone, she's having fundraisers, she's out there, and she's doing great with the general population. And, I think it's a tough situation. Obviously, the Congresswoman is much more well-funded, but that doesn't mean she's going to win. The people, I believe in my heart of hearts, are with with Rosemary Becchi. I've seen it myself. I've seen the way she interacts with people. And I think the money, there's still time for money, bigger money to come into the district. But even without it, she's done a great job getting money from the general population. And isn't that the type of congresswoman you want? Somebody that gets money from the people and not from special interest groups or big, firms with agendas. She's getting it from the people, and she's doing a great job.
Let's talk about her. Didn't we talk? David, you had mentioned there was a question, with respect to a mailer, right? Which the mailer is, obviously, some form of IE, right?
It wasn't.
And it talked about, it talked about, her, not necessarily disavowing, the burning of the American flag, particularly when, she was, laying it at the doorstep of a, decorated, veteran. And, so, you got that kind of money going to, her campaign. But, when she, clearly did not disavow, that ugly mailer, which was very tantamount to Donald Trump not disavowing, white supremacists.
Oh, good Lord.
And Proud Boys.
Good Lord.
Did I inject the race card?
Oh my goodness, please. First of all, she can't coordinate. You know that as well.
No, but she could have said, you know what? I disagree with it. It wouldn't have been that hard.
Absolutely.
It's
not her money.
To do with that. And
she wasn't invested in the mailer. It's an IE. It's not her money. She easily could have said, you know what? I don't have anything to do with it. And
she didn't have anything to do with it. She can't coordinate with outside.
Right, but she also didn't disavow the mailer, which is, it's tantamount to saying I agree with it, so it's fine.
I've never even seen it.
I think ultimately we're talking about a corporate lobbyist who couldn't actually even get lobbying.
Brian, you know very well that you see your opposition's mail.
No, I haven't. No, I haven't.
You do. When we're in this environment, we pay more attention to the opposition's mail than we do our own mail.
That is, I want to see it.
Plus, it's been all over social media. It was disingenuous. Everybody's seen it. I mean, I've gotten it texted like 5 different times over the last, few days. Everybody saw it.
And then she's participating in a rally in Parsippany, where the Proud Boys are there as well, and she's part and parcel of that rally.
It was moms and dads and families. It's just another twisted thing because you're. Frankly, can't attract those type of crowds, so you have to slam it and say it's filled with white supremacists. It wasn't. It was filled with families.
Our crowds are home trying to stay alive and making sure we stay alive. That's actually the goal.
Hey, David.
Please.
David.
Clearly, we're still at 2-2, right? The 2 Republicans still think.
I think Brian's coming over. I think we
got Brian. Saily, we got him. I think we got
him right there.
You guys are doing fantastic. So, David, one other thing.
But tempted to bench Assemblyman Bergen for a second because the mailer that we're talking about was on my website on Friday. And
I'm sorry, man. I do. Look, I go there every day, 3 times a day. But
Can we talk about not the mailer, but the Saily story?
Well,
again?
Yeah.
Because I want to know.
1 sec. I got something.
I want to know what politician in 2020 thought it was a good idea in CD11 to call up or to email a constituent's employer? Because I think I saw this movie. I have the T-shirt. It didn't work out really well the first time. Yeah. And look, any politician, wannabe politician, anybody who's out wanting to represent people can't handle an opposing view. I think
I don't think it was opposing views.
So I just want to hear about this because David, I thought you would ask me. I had my answer prepped and everything.
Oh, but David, you can't. But look, I got something that actually happened in the debate that I want to talk about.
You're muted, David.
So do I. Let's talk about. Yeah, let's talk about. Laura talked about a little bit about the pandemic, although she was a little off a little bit, but that's okay.
No,
we're gonna bring her back to reality, right? So we are in the middle of a global pandemic, and you could clearly see that during this debate that there's only one person in this race that wants to protect healthcare. Mikie Sherrill. Mikie Sherrill. Clear.
That is so not true. There could be nothing more untrue about what you said.
Other than the fact that she wants to get rid of the ACA, which she absolutely admitted.
It's a failing solution.
So what's the
Most
plan?
people can't afford the premiums. They
plan?
can't afford the deductibles. It's
What's
not,
the plan?
yeah,
Because
no.
I've been hearing about how terrible the ACA
Yeah, well,
is
President Trump is working on a plan, and he'll do it.
Oh, I'm really
President
glad that he
Trump-
waited until
Laura,
the
President
third
Trump
year
has
at the
been working
10th
on a
month.
plan. He's
Second.
been working on a
Well, the
plan
poor
for
guy,
long.
he has to
President Trump,
defend
I
himself.
know.
President Trump is a
I've
president.
I've been trying to unpack my boxes downstairs since we moved in the house 10 years ago. I feel like the president and I are on the same
There
page.
has never been a president that accomplished more than President
No,
Trump.
there's
in the
never
past
been a
27
president,
months.
you know,
There's
there's
never
never
been a
been a
president.
president
No,
in the
there
State of
isn't.
the Union like this one.
Despite
I don't.
people
Here's a
like,
president, here's a president that has disrupted the moral fiber of America.
no, he,
Here's a president that claims he loves America,
He
yet
does.
he can't stand some Americans.
That
And
is
that
not
is the
true.
truth.
Hey,
But
David,
you shouldn't
Don't
have
ask
said
him
the
about
president
the
wasn't in
cowboys.
this debate.
Stand
I don't
stand
remember.
by, you know,
Was he?
stand down, but stand by. What does that mean? What does that mean, Laura? Tell us what that means.
I don't know anything about the Proud Boys, so I'm not the person to
No,
ask
tell
about
us
that.
what stand
All I know
by
is the
president
means.
declared the KKK a terrorist and a hate group.
Tell
He's
us
got
what
more people.
stand down and stand by means. What does that mean?
I don't know anything about that.
I know you probably don't know, but
Okay.
you know, you don't live in the
Wasn't she
shoes
at a
that
rally with the
perhaps I
Proud
do.
Boys? I don't know. Did I read that?
No, I was at the rally, but I was at a rally with families and people and children who love America, who support the police, and who support business and a robust economy.
And
which
the
is what
Proud
we've done
Boys.
for 4 years.
A
No,
white
not the Proud Boys.
supremacist group.
Don't put that in my mouth. I don't even know what the Proud Boys are. Okay.
The pictures. It's not
You
like
know
you
what?
can't see that they were there.
You guys don't have anything to say on the economy. You can't say anything bad about President Trump's policies. There's peace in the Middle East. Actually, there's not the threat of ISIS, but you can't compliment him. Come up with these half crazy things that he's got to be a racist or he's got to be impeachable. It's just nonsense. It really is. And you know what? I'm going to tell I hope Democrats are listening out there, because if you like President
I hope
Trump's
so, too.
policies, no, I do.
do.
If you like President Trump's
I think
policies,
they
but
all
you
agree
don't
with
like,
us.
Laura,
like
with
his
you.
personality, you
And I
should
think
love
And I
Rosemary
think we got
Becchi.
Brian with us too. I think you lost
Rosemary
him, Laura.
Becchi
I think
is
you lost him.
brilliant. She'll have the best policies, just like the president. Yet she's nice and she's wonderful and she's a great human being. I
Look,
think
she
it's a
seems- she
win-win.
seems
It's a
like
win-win.
She seems like a nice. She seems like a nice
She's a
lady.
very nice person.
use
She's a little, you know, she's a little off on the issues. Mikey gave her, you know, a lesson on qualified immunity.
Chairman, let me move this on because one thing that this last exchange has showed me is whether America loves Donald Trump or hates Donald Trump, whether they like Joe Biden or they hate Joe Biden. It is clear that the race for the presidency is sucking every bit of oxygen out of every single room that all of us are in, even this one. So the question is, I want to bring this down, the temperature down a little bit, and ask all of you: is there? And I'll start with Assemblyman Bergen, who has been the most patient. But is there a point where we might see? Is there a future where we might see a change where the focus on solving problems reflects separate but equal branches of government? And if so, when is that going to be?
Oh, well, that's I don't know when it's going to be. I mean, people were so fired up that we can't even in this own conversation here, we can't even focus on the debate, right? So, but let me just thank you for the question. It's a great question. But let me just point out one thing where I think Rosemary really won big in this debate, and that is on the Morris County funding piece, because really the CARES Act money that came over was not at all good for Morris County. Not at all. We lost out on lots of funding here. And a lot of other counties got tremendous amounts of funding, not just to cover the cost for the supplies that she said she wound up getting $18 million later on, but they got funding to put in programs and grants to help businesses. I'm sure Essex County got flooded with cash. So I think that was one of the points in this debate, if I'm critiquing it objectively, where I think Rosemary really hammered home a very important point.
I think Mikey I think Mikey was very, concise, with respect to, what the funding distribution was for Morris County. There was a lot of talk about Morris and Sussex County. Obviously Essex County is a more populated, more densely populated county than both Morris and Sussex. But I think she brought that issue home, and she clarified it. I think Rosemary has a fledgling campaign. I mean, it's pretty obvious, and she has to attach herself to mistruth. Along the way to just get somebody to pay attention to anything that she's saying. So, that would be a natural response for her. Mikie brought that issue home, and I think, the facts speak for themselves. So we have to go back.
I agree, Chairman. I thought, from my perspective, what I heard was a lot of facts, a lot of real policy positions, a lot of real solutions to problems coming from the Congresswoman's, presentation, and a lot of talk about solutions that she didn't actually have or couldn't outline. So I really, as a constituent, because this is my district, I would, no matter if I was on the fence, I'd be concerned about somebody who could only say Nancy Pelosi and could only say finding solutions is important, because yes, we all know that, but unless you have something to replace, for example, the ACA that you want to dismantle, or to talk about, I don't know, whatever else, all the other issues. I mean, my other favorite comment was no one has been tougher on Russia, but I'll leave that one to the side. Unless you actually come with solutions, there was nothing to hang your hat on in this particular debate performance from Ms. Becchi.
That's good point about solutions. But one thing I just want to make, you said that, that Mikie came with facts and she was telling the truth the whole time. But let me just tell you something that I know firsthand. Okay. Mikie Sherrill said that she met with the veterans groups in the state of New Jersey. I stood there in front of a VFW group where the state director who's in charge of representing the VFW said he was denied access to Mikie Sherrill for the entire time she's been a congressperson up until this month when she's running for election. He said it, I watched it, I listened to it. He said he's never in his life been denied access. He is the representative for the VFW. So when she's saying she's meeting with the veterans groups, the fact of the matter is that that wasn't true. And I just told you a couple minutes ago too on qualified immunity, she totally misrepresented what qualified immunity does.
Brian,
totally misrepresented.
I think she gave a clinic to Ms. Becchi on qualified immunity, and you can just say two words that justified what Mikie tried to bring across as a point, and those two words are George Floyd.
Well, so okay, if George Floyd's family wanted to sue the cops for money, then fine, but the cops being punished and qualified immunity have nothing to do with each other. You know that. She's trying to connect them, but they're not connectable.
So I think that's going to be a fair question as a follow-up of this debate is exactly what happened with the VFW, the Congress.
Can I just say, I mean, she's met with them. She said she met with them. And honestly, to me, to think that the one issue you're hitting her on is veterans is really just.
Well, I happen to be a veteran.
Hey, listen. So Saily, what the chairman said, which is you're actually flailing in a campaign. I mean, she's in the U.S. and the U.S. Navy.
I think
most of her bills have to do with veterans.
So, Saily, I get it. But listen, I went to the Superior Military Academy of West Point, and she went to my safety school, so I get to pick on her a little bit on veterans. Okay.
She didn't sponsor the one bill for veterans. She co-sponsored.
You like that, David? Huh?
It's super easy.
He helped get 14 veterans bills into law in this environment. I mean, that's like,
he didn't.
Like, if you're gonna hit her on something,
I mean,
hit her on something that's interesting. But this is like such a low blow. It's not even.
Rosemary Becchi for Congress. So there must be a reason for that.
I think it's a fair question. It's not going to. I don't know that it's.
The reason for it is. What was that last thing, Laura? Rosemary Becchi for Congress for what? What?
I was saying veterans are rallying around Rosemary Becchi for Congress. They are.
True.
Well, look, everybody's, Election day is not November 3rd. Election day is every day, right? And, I think, every day, it becomes clearer and clearer that Mikie Sherrill is the overwhelming choice for the 11th Congressional District. So this notion about her having some issues with veterans is just not true. It's as true as she is for defunding the police, which is another myth that that Ms. Becchi and you, Laura, are conjuring up. So so let's get off that and let's get on.
May I ask you a question?
I will say it's about as real as no one. The president has been the toughest on Russia. So I mean, those.
Why is it that the state PBA and other PBA groups took their endorsement from the Congresswoman and gave it to Mikie Sherrill? Why is that? If she's
all right, so I want to, because we're getting toward the end, and I don't want to be where nobody's watching us at all. But I want to ask a question, and this is going to be a Morris County question. Chairman Jones, your county has not voted for a Republican presidential candidate since Eisenhower. So
I'll be quiet.
I don't know that you want to be the guy that bucks that trend this year, but
Yeah.
David Wasserman, who I have a huge amount of respect for, he's the House race editor of the Cook Political Report. He listed Morris County as one of a dozen counties in the country where he thinks it might flip from Trump in 16 to Biden in 20. Let me ask Chairwoman Ali, is Donald Trump in danger of losing Morris County?
absolutely. You should come to our office, David, one day and see the amount of people that come in and out all day long, looking for President Trump signs, looking for bumper stickers. It's busy 24/7. The phones are blowing up. Our email is blowing up. Our social media is blowing up. That again is just conjured up by, I don't know who, but there is no way that Morris County is going to deliver for the president.
Saily, I know you're shy, but maybe I could get you to answer this question.
I'm going to try to come out of my shell here. But again, I'm going to go back to numbers because I like numbers and I see the numbers the way, Wasserstein does. And I have them right here. In 2016, we had Republicans had a 14,000 person advantage in registrations. At the primary, the advantage for the Democrats was only 3,500. And between the primary and September 30th, we're up to 8,000 more Democrats.
Well,
the demographics are changing. The registrations are changing. The unaffiliated number is going down because people are affiliating. We're looking at a trend that, I get it. I know what you're trying to say, Chairwoman. You could stick to that talking point as much as you like, but the numbers tell me something completely different.
You just gave
and we will see in 20, and we saw it in 2018.
Morris County.
Yeah, we saw it in 2018 when we had the largest. She had the largest jump, right? The largest swing from Rodney's 19 points to her 15 points. It was the largest swing in the country, other than one, which I think was in Texas or something that was uncontested.
The question's Morris County.
The numbers are there.
You got the wrong numbers.
Are there.
You got the wrong numbers. That's the Congressional district.
Because of de Blasio.
I'm looking at the Congressional district, but I think, Morris County is the big part of that. So sure.
Saily and I work together, and Saily is dead on with those numbers.
I love my numbers.
They're not Morris County numbers, so they're
Morris County numbers. Okay. Wake up to the reality. You guys are defending a reality that doesn't exist.
And so said by a chairman that hasn't had a tough race since Dwight Eisenhower.
And he also just got $4 million for a golf course from the governor, so he's happy.
So we're all good. I want to thank all of you. This was fun.
All outside, Brian.
I say this, we all from both sides. We have mutual friends. I didn't expect that this group was going to be harder to handle than Art Gallagher and Steve. It was a challenge, and I hope the people that are still watching, learn something. But all four of you, very very loyal to your party, very loyal to your candidates, very, very strong advocates, and you all deserve to be commended for that. Assemblyman, we'll talk later about this little Army-Navy rivalry that you have.
Please.
But you didn't mention the Marines, so We'll leave that alone. I just want to thank everybody. Essex County Democratic Chairman LeRoy Jones, Morris County Republican Chair Laura Ali, Assemblyman Brian Bergen, and Saily Avelenda, the Executive Director of the New Jersey Democratic State Committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
All,
Thank you, guys. It was fun.
Thank you. Yep.
thank you all so much.
Lots of fun. Have a great night.